I want you to look at this picture and tell me what you think this is.
Okay. It looks like the boogeyman. Tree trunk.
Okay.
Weird. What is this?
This is what I want to talk about.
Okay.
This right here.
That's an alien?
This is an alien.
That looks like the boogeyman. Why does he have mittens on?
You know what? Let's get into the story.
All right.
I went down to Pascagoula completely negative, but I worked with those men for quite a while. I listened to tapes that had been taken when they didn't know they were being taped. I saw how Charlie behaved under hypnosis, and finally the lie detector test. All of those things convinced me that he was not making it up. They had had an experience, period.
But you can't determine whether they actually saw a flying saucer or were taken aboard one.
No, I couldn't at all. There's no way that I know of in which we could determine that. It's like if you tell me that you dreamt of purple peach trees last night. What can I do about it?
Well, you have to go on the assumption that he is indeed telling the truth.
Well, yeah. You have to then judge by his past reputation, how he's regarded in the community. Would he have any reason to do it? All that sort of thing. So, I just don't know about that. Of course, it fits a pattern. You see, that's not an isolated case. We have a catalog now of well over 800 such cases.
Okay, so what you were just listening to was J. Allen Hynek being interviewed about this case. It takes place in 1973 in mid-October. And there's these two guys, they're out on a river, and they're fishing, and they get abducted by a UFO. And it was investigated by Project Blue Book, and as you can hear, Dr. J. Allen Hynek himself kind of believes that it's true.
Yeah, he said they had an experience. That's kind of open-ended, though.
All right, so let's get into what this experience is. And there's no better way than the people themselves telling you exactly what happened.
On October 23rd of this year, Charles Hickson, one of the men involved in that incident at Pascagoula, invited WWDC newsman Rudolph Brewington to his home in Goshen, Mississippi. That's just north of Pascagoula. And Hickson recalled his experience.
Last year on October the 16th, in the fall of the year, Calvin Parker and myself, at that time we were employed by F.B. Warp & Son Shipyard in Pascagoula. And sometime during the day on October 11th, we decided to go fishing after work, something that I do, quite often when I'm not working is fishing. So after we got off work, probably at 4:30, I think, we were working 9 hours a day. I came home and had to get my fishing gear, and we wouldn't go out in a boat because we were going to the banks of the river and fish from the banks for speckled trout and redfish. So we got our bait, and we got to the river and tried several spots, and the fish didn't seem to be biting. So there was one more spot that we were going to try. In the past, I'd caught fish there a lot of times at the old Saltpeter shipyard. It's an old banded shipyard. So we went back up the river to the old shipyard, and we were fishing from a pier off of a wharf, you might say, on the banks of the river there. And it had become dark by that time. We do quite a bit of fishing after dark, down here in that time of the year. So I don't know what attracted my attention, where I had reached around to get more bait, which was sitting behind us, or I heard some kind of zipping-like sound, like air, or steam or something escaping from a pipe. And as I turned around, I saw some two blue flashing lights, or either pulsating lights, I'm not sure. And it seemed like it was some type of craft, and it seemed like it was almost down to the ground then. In fact, it seemed to be about a couple of feet, above the ground, and it just hovered there. So Calvin had turned by this time, and he was looking at it too. And really, I didn't know what to do. I was just spellbound there for a few minutes, and then almost immediately some type of opening appeared in the end that was toward us, with what I assumed to be the front end. And the light that had come outside, it was real bright light. And three things appeared in the doorway. of the craft, and they seemed to just glide out of the craft. They never touched the ground. They seemed to just glide across. It must have been 25 or 30 feet from us, or maybe a little further than that. And they came to us, just glided over to us, and two of them took me by the arms from the side, and one took hold of Calvin, and I seen Calvin go limp, and I didn't know it then, but he had fainted. So they carried me inside the craft, and the light was almost blinding inside. In fact, for about 3 or 4 days, I had something like a bad welding flash in my eyes. And I can't recall, or I can't remember just what was on the inside, simply because the light was so bright that I just couldn't make out what it was. But I didn't see any tables or chairs, and the room seemed to be round. Of course, that could have been because the light seemed to be glowing from the walls and the overhead and the ceiling. But they carried me, I guess, about the middle of the room, and we would just seem to be suspended there. I couldn't move. I didn't have any feelings, no sensation of any feel. And it seemed to something like a big eye. I keep referring to it as an eye because it was about size for a small baseball. In the end, it was focused toward me, was a different color or a different light. And it seemed to come directly out from the wall, and it came within 6 or 8 inches of my face, and it remained there for a few minutes, and then very few minutes, and then it went over my entire body. I'm assuming it did, because when it went down like this, I seemed to be suspended there, and the next time I seen it, it was coming back up over this way. So I assumed that it went over my entire body. But it came back in front of my face and stayed there for a few more minutes, and then it seemed to just go right back into the wall. And these things, the way they were holding me, I was elevated, because they weren't as tall as me, and they were upright, and I was elevated like this, and I could move my eyes, only thing I could move. And I could see that they had released me. And I don't know where they went, whether they went outside the craft or another room or compartment, but they didn't come in front of me. And they left me that way for a few minutes, I don't know how long. And then after a while, I seen them then when they come back to the side of me and took hold of me again, and they carried me back outside the craft, and we were still just gliding. I wasn't touching anything that I know of. And they seemed to just glide back out to where they had taken me from and put me back down on the ground. Well, when they did, I fell because my legs were weak and they gave way on me. And it was this time that I seen Calvin again. He was standing there. He was standing facing the river with his arms outstretched, and he was almost in shock. He seemed to appear to me at that time something was wrong with him. But so I was trying to make my way toward him, and I was crawling. I couldn't get my legs to working. But before I got to him, the strength of what it was came back to my legs, and I was getting up on my feet, and I heard the same sound I'd heard before, a zipping sound. And I glanced around, and I saw the blue flashing lights, and the craft was just gone, just almost instantly. And I made it to Calvin, and I shook him and was calling to him, and it took me several minutes to get him where I could even talk to him, with any sense, and he was going in shock.
So these poor guys, Calvin and Charles, are out fishing, and a UFO comes and abducts them, and to me almost sounds like they were examined.
Yeah, but at least it didn't sound that bad.
No, one thing that's kind of nice about this case is, although it sounds very spooky, nothing really super spooky happened to them, or not anything that they remember. So I showed you a picture, Bree, and you said it looks like a combination of many things. When I see the picture, it almost looks like a mummy to me.
I can see that.
And so I think what we'll play next is a really short clip of Charles himself describing exactly what they look like, and the picture is going to make a lot more sense to you once you hear his description.
And these things that came out of the craft, they were about 5 or 5'4" tall, and they didn't have a neck. The head seemed to come directly to the shoulders, and they had something that resembled a nose on a face, and about where ears would be was something that was similar to the nose, only it was a little longer. It seemed to come out almost to a point. And under the nose, there was something like a slit for a mouth, and it was very wrinkled. And it appeared to me to be something like an elephant skin, but I don't know where it was a metal or what it was, but it seemed to be very wrinkles with the wrinkles running horizontal. And in the area where the eyes should have been, it was so wrinkled that I'm not even sure there was eyes. I can't recall whether there was any eyes or not, and Calvin says he can't.
So it's interesting to me because when I first saw the picture, I think mummy, but now I'm thinking about this like weird wrinkled skin, and I'm like, this almost slightly reminds me of the Hocus Pocus movie and the book that's made out of skin. You know what I mean?
I can see that.
Like that weird, wrinkly, old, and then you think about elephant, like cracked and dried, and now I'm like, wait, what the fuck is this thing? Are these aliens? Like, what is happening here?
Did you ever see the Communion movie?
No.
Okay, well, the aliens in there, some of the aliens, are these very small aliens, and the skin looks like what he's describing.
Interesting.
And it's like a tannish brown color, and it's very much like that. Almost like gremlin-y, like, I don't know, like a forest sloth.
Yeah, that's kind of like, when I think of his description, I think of like some weird hairless creature in a forest, like a dark forest, like living in like a weird hole or a cave or something.
Yeah, like moving around like...
But, you know, Charles here is pretty sure he has an idea of what he thinks these actually are. And so I'm going to play that.
I think now, and I have reasons to believe, many different reasons to believe, these things were robots. They weren't beings. They were being controlled by beings from somewhere else.
What made you think that, sir?
Well, for this, I mean, I just mentioned several reasons. I didn't see any movement of breath in the chest area. I didn't see any movement of breath in the slit of the mouth area. It didn't move. And when they move, they seem to move as something mechanically. They could move their arms like this and in their shoulders, but their head didn't move. And when they move, they seemed to turn as if mechanically. It appeared to me that they had something that they were programmed, you might say, to do something. They had something specific to do, and they just simply done it, and their attention wasn't distracted one way or the other.
So we have aliens, mummies, weird forest ghouls, robots. Like, I feel like the story has a little bit of everything in it. You know what I mean?
Maybe just in the way that he's describing it, but that's very typical. People always talk about the minions that come and do the work of these types of things are often described as being robotic, like little droids.
Now, do you have a personal belief that, like, okay, so you know how there's, like, big gray aliens and, like, the little greens or whatever that do their work for them? Would you consider those to be some type of maybe, like, mechanical, like, robot droid? And are we considering those still to be alien?
Well, I guess if it's otherworldly, it's still alien. Like, whether or not it's a robot, it doesn't matter. It doesn't come from Earth that we know of. And if it's manufactured by aliens and obviously is under the control of them and looks weird like some of the other ones, I mean, I would consider that aliens, aliots.
Do you consider them to be good or bad?
I don't think I have an opinion towards that. I think they just have an agenda to figure things out. This doesn't sound like a negative case to me. And I think in most cases, it's just very scientific, you know? Like, you can't look at scientists and really say if they're good or bad for some of the things that they do. So I kind of feel the same way about that.
Well, we have one last clip for this story, and it's kind of Charles wrapping up what he thinks, you know, good, bad, evil, what was it? And so it's an interesting listen.
What is your feeling on UFOs? Do you think that there's life beyond this Earth?
Well, let me explain now. Before this happened to me, I can't say that I believed or disbelieved, because I simply didn't think about it one way or the other. I guess I'm like most people. I had my own little world that I lived in, and I didn't consider life on other worlds. I didn't think about it. But now there's no doubt in my mind. I positively know that there's at least one world up there somewhere with some type of life on it. I know it to be a fact.
An intelligent but peaceful life.
That's right. I think they're peaceful because, you know, they didn't try to harm Calvin and me physically. In fact, they seem to be very easy with us. What they wanted, I don't know, but I certainly don't think that they're hostile at all.
Well said. Well said.
Well, it's like it starts off creepy. You listen to him, you know, tell the story, and you're like, oh my God, you're like out at night and you're fishing and you get abducted. But then at the end of it, he's like, you know, it really wasn't that bad, guys. Like, yeah, I kind of had like some weird nightmares for some time. But at the end of it all, I think they were just kind of checking us out.
Yeah, it's like an awakening experience. Most of us, you're living in your own little world. People don't really think about it. You're like, and then something happens and it forces you to know. You don't really have the luxury of belief anymore. You just know.
Well, and what's interesting about this case is all signs point towards there's no way that this is a hoax, and that's what I really like about it. You have J. Allen Hynek basically coming out saying, well, there's some type of experience that happened, and I can't say yes or no, up or down, or make left or right in it. And then you also have, you know, other evidence. He went and took a polygraph test and passed it. And they both went into hypnosis. And J. Allen Hynek was, you know, listened to the tapes, and even he couldn't discredit what they were saying. So it's an interesting little, you know, slice of something out there that we have some audio evidence and some stuff like that to really still look into this case. I definitely think you guys should go check out their book. It's called UFO at Pascagoula. And then I'll also link inside of our show notes the full extended interview because it lasted like 39 minutes. And obviously we're not going to play it all here. I chopped it up to what it was. So, you know, we guys can have a quick intro to it. But there's so much more about this case that you guys should really look into.
I heard a really funny joke yesterday, and it was on the cooking channel or whatever.
Yeah.
On like Halloween Baking Wars or something. Mm-hmm. And he was like, I dated a really cool ghoul once, but then she ghosted me.
That's funny.
I was like,
I like that.
I like that one.
I like that.